Good morning. The Celtic briefing, Friday, September 17th, the morning after an exciting but ultimately probably quite disappointing night in Europe for Celtic. Sean Martin and Alison McConnell, alongside me, Andy Bargh, to chew the fat over Celtic's 4-3 defeat against Real Betis. Sean and Alison 2-0 up fairly early in the game and then 4-2 down, and Anthony Ralston's goal kind of salvaging a wee bit of a closer scoreline. Sean, we'll come to you first, just generally, and we've only got a few minutes, remember. What do you make of what happened last night?
How do you cover 7 goals in a couple of minutes? I mean, it was an open end-to-end game. I think everybody saw that. I think despite it being nervy at times, for those of a Celtic persuasion, it was a really good game to watch in general. I'm sure neutrals would have enjoyed it. A general overall, I think you've scored 3 times against a team that everybody was thinking that although they were the third ranked team in the group, were actually probably the second team. I think there are positives to take. I'm sure we'll come to them later on after we go through the goals and the general performance. I think there's also negatives that I think we'll come to. But overall, an open end-to-end game, good to watch, albeit didn't come away with the result that they wanted.
Alison, what's your take? That was an electric start and then a rollercoaster match.
I think it affirmed what you already know. I'm not sure that you would take anything from the performance that you don't already know. I think on the one hand, you can applaud Celtic's performance from middle to front. I think that first half an hour, I thought they looked very assured. But I think there is a perennial question mark over the cheapness of the goals that are conceded, particularly in this platform. And you could go back over the last 20 years for this. It's not a new phenomena, but I think it must be incredibly frustrating for the manager, because although now it brings a microscopic element to the philosophy that he wants Celtic to play in his own style, I think when you look at it, what really undermined the performance was individual mistakes rather than how Celtic were set up to play. And I think that will be particularly frustrating. I thought the goals were cheap. I thought all the goals were cheap. I thought they were preventable. I thought there was a bit of dithering in the box. I think, we could go through every goal and list how easily it could have been prevented. And I think that will be the frustrating element.
Well, the honest man here leaving a comment saying that Celtic need a plan B when leading away in Europe. Sean, is that how Ange Postecoglou is going to operate?
No. I don't. Simply put, no, I don't think that is how he's going to operate. And we kind of touched on it previewing the game as well. I think the way that the Celtic team sets up, the personnel as well, Alison touched on it there about the defensive confusion and stuff. I don't think a plan B that involves presumably sitting back would actually suit Celtic anyway. I think that would be asking for trouble regardless, and you're as well playing to your own strengths and hoping that is enough. Obviously it wasn't enough last night, but it could have been if not for a couple of individual errors, you could argue.
Yeah, Alison, the way that Ange Postecoglou plays, and he said that, I think it was after the AZ home game when Celtic had the 2-0 lead, we'll go to Holland and attack, which kind of flies in the face of logic, but the job was done in the end. The same last night at 2-0?
Yeah, I think so. I think the manner that Celtic started the game will foster an encouragement. But I go back to how easily the goals were gifted. I think as you go deeper into the tournament, there are key players to come back, which I think will enhance Celtic's hand. But I just think the overriding feeling last night will be one of frustration.
Well, the Celtic did start the game well, and it was Jota that scored the opening goal. Sean, is he staking a claim to be Celtic's second choice striker behind Furuhashi and ahead of Giakoumakis at this rate?
Well, I don't know how fair that is when you've not seen Giakoumakis yet, but I think you can only judge it on what Jota does, and that's 3 goals in 2 games. So he can't really do much more in terms of the goals to games. I think he can do more in terms of all-round display if it's in his locker, and I think there was elements last night. Certainly in the positives, there was other players and stuff, but I think in terms of Ayete's positives, there were elements that were encouraging. He came deep to get involved in the counter-attack that led to the penalty. He had a few kind of counter presses later on, and obviously he scored, which is the main thing. Another good poacher's effort, although for the first goal, I think you can't mention the first goal without talking about Jota's influence in it. I think it was so direct. The ball was so teasing. It was into the middle of the goal. To be honest, it owes as much to the ball in, causing absolute havoc, as it does to Ajeti getting himself in that position.
Yeah, there's some tremendous wing play. The quick feet, Alison, a few step overs, and the ball right across the face. It's impossible to defend. And to be honest, it was quite a scrappy finish, but the ball ended up in the back of the net, which is the main thing from Ajeti and Celtic's point of view at that stage.
Yeah, I thought he played well. I think he looks very exciting in the glimpses that you've seen of him. I think he looks like an excellent prospect. I would agree. I thought the quality of the ball was telling. I think for the second goal in the build up to the penalty, again, I thought Tom Rodgick's ball just made the move. I think you saw glimpses of the quality that he has. So I do think there are elements of the game that foster some encouragement. I think you have to quantify the performance with the significant changes that Celtic have had to make in a fairly short space of time in terms of an overhaul of the squad as a whole, gelling new players together, forming the spine of a new team almost, and the introduction of other players because of injury issues last night. If you go back even just to the Midfield and the Champions League qualifier, there were only 3 players who survived from that game who started last night. So you can see the scope of change and overhaul that's had to take place in a very short space of time. So I think it's maybe harsh to judge Celtic at the minute. I think you maybe need a bit of time just to allow things to knit together. But certainly, I think the defensive element remains a headache.
Sean, the honest man, back in the comments saying that Celtic missed McGregor. I think that's going to happen anytime that he doesn't play, regardless of where it is in midfield. But he's being deployed as the single pivot at the moment. It was Sorrow that came in from last night. Were you surprised that it wasn't McCarthy?
Slightly. I thought he might have gone with both. But again, that probably speaks to the attitude that he's got towards it. And I think you saw the benefit. You saw the benefit and the drawback of playing Rogic and Turnbull, I think, with certain areas where maybe midfielders should have been coming over to help the fullbacks cover and stuff. But I think certainly McGregor's presence was missed. His composure more than anything was missing at times when trying to play out, but especially after conceding the first. I think they might not have seemed quite as rattled, as quite as there for the taking as they were if McGregor was playing to take the ball off the defenders and stuff. We go on about it all the time. He's obviously not a traditional defensive midfielder. He's not a defence first kind of player, but his own particular brand of protection is being able to take the ball even if he's under pressure, to relieve the pressure or the kind of the uncertainty from his defenders and other players round about him. And I think that was missing and will be missing, because I don't think that they can replace that with any of the midfielders that they've got.
Yeah, and Alison, it's unlikely that to screen the defence there's going to be 2 holding midfielders there. As Sean mentioned, that he thought maybe Sorrow and McCarthy would get brought in. In the end, it was just one of them. And I think that McCarthy, and we've got another comment here from Clover Boy saying that it needs to be fit in the next 2 weeks, or Celtic might find themselves in a wee bit of bother for when McCallum McGregor can't play.
I think he's a huge loss, I think, for the qualities that Sean has just described, but also I think his leadership was missing last night. I didn't think there was anyone with any real leadership qualities in outfield. I think you could see Joe Hart trying to direct things at times, but I think you missed McGregor's influence that way too. I think we don't quite know the scope of the injury and how serious it is, but I think between him and Furuhashi being out, I think both of them are massive losses. I think you really want to see them back in as quickly as possible, though obviously there's no sense in rushing anyone back prematurely, but I think the ramifications of them being out for a significant period are significant for Celtic.
Sean, it wasn't the first time that Celtic have conceded a couple of goals in quick succession recently in Europe. I think it happened against AC Milan, is that right, last season, after going 2-0 up at San Siro as well. So this is a trend that is just biting Celtic in the backside again and again at the moment.
It goes on longer than that, I would say. I think it transcends managers and players, and it seems to happen just consistently. But again, we've touched on it. Again, it seems to be a theme this season anyway, that it's more maybe an individual error now and again that seems to lead to the kind of the door opening, if you know what I mean, and teams just seem to walk through it once they've opened it the first time. I think last night it would be remiss not to mention when we were talking about midfield there that Sorrow didn't have a good game again. I think that needs to be mentioned. I think the general lack of composure, I think he contributes to that when he's the kind of sole defensive midfielder, because he just doesn't have much composure in general. He does. The thing is, he does do some good work in there in that area, but often it's undone again by his decision making and kind of rashness shortly after he's done something well, if you know what I mean. And he definitely could have been off last night. I think the referee was card happy, so it's kind of surprising that he wasn't off. And it was still on the pitch come 60 minutes when McCarthy came on.
What about the centre-half pairing? Alison, Carter-Vickers was preferred again to Stephen Welsh. I think there was one point, I think it was the second goal, where he tried to step up Carter-Vickers and play the runner offside, timed it wrongly, and he got in and scored.
I wonder just about his levels of fitness. He's not played a lot of football. He's come in and had to go straight in because of other issues. I think both of them together are unconvincing. I don't think they've lent a real solidity yet to the back line. I feel a bit for Stephen Welsh. I'm not sure that he deserved to go out. I think his performances have been decent over the piece. I think there was a call maybe to go with experience, but I think both come up short last night and previously. I think Christopher Julian's return possibly next month will be key for Celtic. I think it'll lend some kind of stability, but I think there are still serious question marks defensively.
Sean, how do you feel about that? Because you weren't overly opposed, as far as I can remember, to Carter-Vickers coming into the team.
No, I mean, on Saturday, I wanted Welsh to start. I thought he'd done nothing to merit dropping out. But my point when we were talking about the lineup for the Betis game was that on the basis that I thought he was going to play Juranovic left back and take Ralston back in at right back, then he wouldn't change 3 of the back 4 position-wise from Saturday. And for that reason, it would continue with Carter-Vickers and Starfelt, and that is what he opted for. I still feel Welsh has been hard done by. That said, it is only the second game that Carter-Vickers has played. I do think that it's kind of not worrying, but that kind of confusion that the two of them seem to have while playing together a couple of times last night, you're wondering why was the confusion there at all. There was one in particular where the ball was played over. There was no pressure really on Carter-Vickers, who was the guy to play the ball, but yet Starfelt was running in behind him and could see that it was Carter-Vickers that he was running towards, but yet still tried to kick it. And you're just going, like, talk to each other. There's only a couple of words needed there to talk to each other. But that is only the second time they've played together. You can't be overly critical of things like that, but it does need sorted out quicker. And obviously that second goal with try to play the offside trap, Carter-Vickers didn't step up in time, and you could argue Ralston never followed his man in far enough and stuff. There's certainly what Alison said there. The worry is definitely the defensive lapses.
What about Juranovic at left back, Sean? And a new penalty taker, maybe?
As far as I can discern, that's the first time he's hit a penalty at top level football, which makes it all the more impressive to me, I think. He stood up to take it. There could have been other players. I thought Ayeti would want it personally. But he stood up and he took it and he scored it, which is to his credit. I thought that's the second time he's played left back in his opening few games, and I thought he done reasonably well again. I thought he linked up well with Montgomery, who I want to give a mention to as well. I think he done his case no harm. Obviously, he was playing left wing rather than left back, but I thought he linked up well with Juranovic at times. I thought Montgomery, I know you asked me about Juranovic, but I'm going to go on about Montgomery for a bit. I thought Montgomery showed a wee bit of a maturity to his display last night. And as I say, done his case no harm to be more involved in the team.
Alison, Montgomery, pass marks, absolutely?
Definitely for me. I think every time I've seen him, I've been impressed with him. I thought it was a mature performance from him, especially on a night like that when it was so topsy-turvy. I think he could feel he made a decent contribution.
And a word for Joe Hart as well, Sean. You're keen to get a word in. That was a great save he made in the first half as well, down to his right. And captain for the evening too.
Yeah, Alison's touched on it already. You can see his leadership skills. You've been able to see it since he joined. The way that he talks to his defenders and different things. And I think last night, albeit they ended up conceding a few anyway, I don't think he was at fault. And I think the 2 saves that he made midway through the first half were good saves, and they were timely saves. Again, they conceded not long after it, but he done his role, he done his part, and he's adding a few timely saves to his CV since he joined Celtic already. I think he's been an impressive signing so far.
Well, there was chat that the Betis game wasn't the most important one of the week. I think that just comes down to a matter of perception. The next one is Livy at the weekend, where probably Celtic can't afford to lose like they did last night, Alison. Tough game. Livy haven't had a good start to the season at all. Many people thinking that they'll be the team to go down, but Celtic can't go there and get shown up like they have done a couple of times in the past few seasons.
I think there's always a feeling that Celtic don't play well on the artificial surfaces. I think they're always sticky games at Livingston and at Rugby Park. I think we've seen it in recent seasons. They're fairly stodgy performances. I think Livingston have had a disappointing start to the campaign, but it's a free hit for them. It's a game that no one expects them to take anything from. I think they'll be looking to capitalise on any lethargy from last night's game, and also just to make it as tight and compact a game as possible, just to restrict the width within Celtic's team and restrict the movement. I think he maybe needs to make a few changes if he can, given the personnel available. And I think it's a win at all costs game, really. I think it's not the kind of game that's going to be pretty, but I think they just have to go and get the job done and make sure there's no slip-ups now. What
kind of personnel changes, Sean, might that include?
It depends who's available to him, I suppose, but Abada's going to be back, as far as we're aware. I wouldn't be surprised to see him possibly coming in. If you're wanting to go down the let's not risk it route, then you could argue Montgomery at left back so that you're not playing both of your first team right backs in the same game again. But that's no harm to Juranovic. I thought he'd done well again at left back, and all right, Ralston had a couple of moments. But if you want to argue that you don't want to play both your right backs and risk them, then maybe Montgomery back to left back, Juranovic right back potentially, and Jota and Abada on the wings with Ayeti through the middle. Midfield, obviously, they will be missing McGregor again. It'd be interesting to see if he sticks with Soro after that display, or if he goes with maybe McCarthy from the start. But you'd imagine it probably will be Turnbull and Rogic again.
Alison, is that similar to the way you expect things to pan out?
Yeah, I think the key one for me will be McCarthy. I think McCarthy will start the game, assuming that Callum McGregor's still out. I think it will be McCarthy that slots back in, and I would expect Abada to be back in too if he's available, as we would anticipate he is now.
Right, we'll see how things pan out on Sunday. There's a few people in the comments that are saying as well, absolutely cannot fail to win Celtic on Sunday, just to try and keep ties with the teams at the top of the table. So see how it pans out. Sean and Alison, thanks for joining me as always.
Thank you.